The calendar read August 1939. Deep within the fortified heart of the Kremlin, the world watched in stunned disbelief as two of the most violently opposed political systems on Earth put aside their mutual hatred to finalize a treaty that would seal the world's fate. Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, sworn ideological enemies, formally became partners in a pact of non-aggression. For the Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin, this maneuver was not a simple agreement. It was the crowning achievement of his geopolitical ambition. But for Adolf Hitler, it was the ultimate act of strategic deception, setting the stage for the massive betrayal known as Operation Barbarossa, pushed the world's most powerful tyrant to the brink of total mental and political collapse. This is the story of the day Hitler utterly shattered Stalin's supreme confidence. To fully grasp the depth of the humiliation, one must first understand the mind of the man it was inflicted upon. Joseph Stalin was more than a mere tyrant. He saw himself as a grandmaster of the European power game. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact of 1939 was, in his mind, his greatest strategic victory. By signing a treaty with his fascist rival, he believed he had secured multiple advantages at once. Crucially, he had bought indispensable time to continue rebuilding the Red Army, a fighting force he himself had disastrously weakened through the paranoid Great Purge of the late 1930s. During these purges, Stalin had systematically imprisoned or executed nearly two-thirds of the Red Army's highest-ranking officers, over 35,000 experienced commanders, a desperate act to neutralize any perceived political threat, but one that stripped the military of its most competent leadership. Secret protocols in the pact also granted him permission to expand the Soviet Empire, allowing him to seize eastern Poland, the vulnerable Baltic states, and parts of Romania, creating a massive deep buffer zone vital for protecting the Soviet heartland. The partnership that followed was terrifyingly effective. As Hitler's mechanized panzers streamed into Poland from the west, the Red Army simultaneously invaded from the east, carving the nation up between the two dictatorships. While the rest of the world looked on in horror, Stalin systematically reaped the benefits. The pact functioned as a license for imperial conquest, and it lulled him into a catastrophic sense of security. Economically, the two monstrous powers became deeply and critically intertwined. The Soviet Union dispatched a steady, vast stream of vital resources, millions of tons of oil, massive amounts of grain, timber, and crude rubber to Germany, directly providing the fuel and raw material the Nazi war machine needed to conquer Denmark, Norway, and France. In return, the Soviets received finished German industrial goods, advanced machine tools, and blueprints for military technology. To military and economic observers, this was not a fragile truce, but a thriving, powerful alliance that benefited both partners immensely. For Stalin, this symbiotic trade was proof of his genius. He believed he could deal with anyone, even the devil himself, and emerge as the ultimate victor. Most critically, Stalin was convinced he had cleverly manipulated the capitalist West and the fascist powers into exhausting themselves against each other. He calculated that the war in the West would be a long, drawn-out bloodbath that would leave both Germany and the Allies spent, positioning the Soviet Union to intervene as the dominant power in a broken Europe. While Hitler was preoccupied fighting Britain, the USSR would secretly grow stronger. Stalin's trust was not placed in Hitler's honor, but in his own cynical calculation. He believed the treaty was simply too strategically beneficial for Hitler to break. He viewed himself not as Hitler's dupe, but as his temporary and far more intelligent partner. This absolute conviction in his own infallible foresight would become his single most devastating vulnerability. As 1940 shifted into 1941, the urgent warnings began to accumulate. They originated from almost every source imaginable. Richard Sorge, a Soviet master spy operating deep inside the German embassy in Tokyo, provided Moscow with increasingly accurate information, eventually providing a precise date for the German attack. Winston Churchill, a lifelong staunch anti-communist, personally sent a message to Stalin, urgently pleading with him to acknowledge the massive German military buildup along his frontier. Soviet border guards reported an unprecedented concentration of German divisions, tanks, and aircraft just across the line. Adolf Philipp Golikov presented Stalin with detailed reports of the entire Wehrmacht's movements, but he disastrously downplayed their significance, afraid of angering the unpredictable dictator with unwelcome news. Even Stalin's own naval commander, Admiral Nikolai Kuznetsov, defied direct policy and unilaterally put the entire Soviet fleet on high alert just hours before the attack. Stalin had constructed a total information vacuum around himself, where any piece of data that contradicted his own established worldview was instantly dismissed as an enemy deception. Why did this master of paranoia exhibit such critical blindness? The answer lay twisted within the corridors of his own mind. He was so profoundly convinced of his genius in securing the pact that he interpreted every single warning as a trick. Churchill's message, he believed, was nothing more than a desperate British ploy to drag the Soviet Union into their failing war. The detailed reports from his own intelligence officers he dismissed as deliberate disinformation fed to them by Western intelligence agencies. His pathological suspicion of everyone ironically led him to trust the one man he should have feared most. To order a full mobilization based on these unverified warnings would, in his mind, be a sign of catastrophic panic. Worse, it could be interpreted by Hitler as a deliberate provocation, offering the perfect excuse to attack prematurely. Stalin, the self-appointed grandmaster, held his nerve, absolutely convinced he was one strategic move ahead. His pride, his immense ego, and his unwavering belief in his own infallible judgment had become an impenetrable wall, preventing him from seeing the terrible, imminent truth. At 3:15 a.m. on the 22nd of June 1941, that wall of self-deception was utterly obliterated. Operation Barbarossa was unleashed. Over 3 million German soldiers, along with hundreds of thousands of Axis allies, the largest invasion force in human history, surged across a 1,800-mile front. The sheer scale, speed, and fury of the assault were beyond anything the world had ever imagined. The Luftwaffe annihilated the massive, unprepared Soviet Air Force on the ground within the first few hours. Mechanized panzer divisions sliced through the front lines with terrifying speed, beginning a series of colossal, devastating encirclements that would capture millions of Soviet soldiers. The speed, the violence, the sheer totality of the betrayal were a physical and moral shock to the entire Soviet system. But for one man, the shock was total and deeply personal. In the Kremlin, the initial reports were met with stunned silence. Stalin was utterly paralyzed. The man who micromanaged every detail of the Soviet state, who held the lives of millions in his iron grip, was suddenly and dangerously absent. He retreated to his secure dacha outside Moscow, refusing to speak to his generals, refusing to address the nation. For nearly 2 critical days, as the Khrushchev and Molotov paint a picture of a man utterly shattered. When Politburo members finally traveled to the dacha to confront him on June 30th, they found a terrified gloomy finally emerged from his seclusion. It was as a fundamentally changed man. On July 3rd, 11 days after the invasion began, he addressed the Soviet people on the radio. The famously aloof and chillingly distant tyrant was gone. In his place was a voice filled with a strange, unprecedented mix of desperation and gravity. He deliberately abandoned the rigid, cold term comrades used by the Bolsheviks. Instead, he appealed to their most ancient, powerful instincts, calling them brothers and sisters, my friends. It was an unprecedented, almost desperate cry for national unity from a man who had been pushed to the very edge of the abyss. He became the central, unforgiving organizing principle of the entire Soviet war effort. He would recover, and he would ultimately triumph, but the scars of the June 22nd betrayal would never heal. The trust was broken forever. The deception had crushed the man's ego, but in doing so, it had unleashed a monster of even greater, more desperate resolve. A resolve that would ultimately return the favor and consume the very men who had dared to betray him. The story of Barbarossa's first day is a powerful reminder that history is driven not only by armies and vast economics, but most intimately by the egos, vulnerabilities, and fatal flaws of the leaders who command them. If you believe these deep dives into the psychological hidden side of warfare are crucial to truly understanding our past, please support our channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell so you don't miss our next investigation.